The Moth class is referred to as the Formula One of dinghy racing, and as with every sail race, the start is crucial. Landenberger, who had won 3 previous heats, made a flying start and led comfortably halfway into the first beat to windward. But it was his nearest rival for the title, Mark Hughes, sailing Lethal Weapon, that made better use of the light breeze to lead at the first turn. Hughes stretched his lead to 33 seconds on the second leg, with Brad Cawthorne from Queensland rounding second and Landenberger third. In the light variable conditions, some skippers still had a little trouble staying upright. Positions were to remain for the third, fourth and fifth legs, and then tragedy struck the leader Hughes. He snapped a wing and lost all chance in the race. Then Ian Ward, the defending champion, made his huge move. Down by 1 minute 21 seconds at the 6th mark, he sailed brilliantly to peg back the leaders, was in front by 10 seconds at the last mark and held his lead for a courageous win. Making up a lot of ground also was Chris Day in Zarquan to finish second, with Landenberger third. Heat 6 and 7 will be sailed on Thursday and Friday.
Half-Tide Beach near Evans Head on the north coast was an idyllic spot for Andrew Maguire and his Newcastle friends Jason Maloney and Brad Thompson, all keen surfers. But from his hospital bed, Adam explains it all went wrong in an instant.
Well, there was a lot of dolphins around and I thought what I thought was a dolphin come towards me, but I found out it was a shark and just knocked me off the board and then bit me and then went off.
With deep lacerations and stomach wounds, Adam could be described as lucky to be alive. But some shark experts believe the shark, probably a whaler or tiger, was simply warning the young surfer off.
It probably more than likely would have been a territorial attack rather than a food-driven attack. And that explains the shark just biting the surfboard once or twice and then moving off. The chances of the shark actually going in to eat the person, I don't think that was the case.
Adam believes a school of dolphins feeding and playing in the area chased the attacker away, but again the experts think differently.
I think more to a point that the shark didn't like the taste of the surfboard or it was a territorial attack or something like that the boy was saved, rather than the dolphins beating the shark away to save a fellow mammal.
The surfboard is testimony to the horror of the attack, which has attracted interest throughout Australia. The Maguire family received the news from the hospital at around 4:30 yesterday afternoon. Adam's brother and sister, Troy and Tara, said they were stunned by the news. What was the family's reaction?
Shock. Yeah, they were quite shocked about it. Like, when they rang up, they thought straight away it was a car accident, because they wouldn't think of having a shark attack.
Since 1901, there have been 250 shark attacks in Australia. Shark meshing has cut attacks dramatically. The last fatal in Newcastle was at Merewether in 1951. For Adam's surfing mates at his local break at Belmont South, the attack hasn't dampened their enthusiasm for the water.
If it was here, it would make me a lot more cautious. Soon it was up the coast and warmer waters.
But are you going to keep surfing as much?
Yeah, that's for sure. It's the best sport out.
With drownings increasing by 30% in the last 3 years, learning to swim is becoming a very serious business. More than 6,000 children have signed up for the Hunter Vacation swim classes at 45 different pools. The Department of Sport, Recreation and Racing has employed 200 instructors throughout New South Wales for the January courses. From the ages of 4.5 up, the young students are placed in different groups according to ability.
We'll be doing more kick work with our kickboards. Remember how we hold our kickboards? Fingers on the top, thumbs underneath. Alright?
Some are a little reluctant at first, but after 9 lessons, hopefully they'll be able to keep their heads above water. And for the parents that want their children in the water earlier, a toddler's course for 18 months and up is set for February.
Waihee Point in the southwest corner of Lake Macquarie first felt the effects of a torrent of water at 2:30 this morning. The drain overflowed in Wharf Street, causing water to gush through at least one house. There have been 2 more downpours at Waihee Point today, washing away the large part of a backyard of another house there. SES volunteers managed to block off the drain feeding the flood and diverted the water more directly into the lake. A number of roads in Wyongshire have been cut by the rising rivers. Worst affected were in the Yarrabalong and Jillaby areas, while Burns Road Bridge at Arimba is underwater. Wyong police are watching the water level approaching Serpentine Road. No property is in danger, but police and the State Emergency Services are monitoring the situation. To the south at Gosford, at least 50 millimetres of rain and a rising tide in Brisbane water blocked drains, forcing water into houses at Woy Woy, Umina and Inverloch. The flooding has caught the Central Coast State Emergency Services short-staffed. Volunteers were brought in to assist from the Mount Benang Training Centre. Also, a multi-car collision on the freeway at Mooney Mooney caused a pile-up of vehicles and the blocking of all 3 southbound lanes.
The teenager's first major success of 1988 came at the Australian Olympic Selection Trials in Sydney. Donna broke the Commonwealth 400 metres individual medley record by 7/10 of a second. Her time of 4 minutes 45.12 seconds was more than 7 seconds under the Olympic qualifying standard. In Seoul, Donna became the hunter and Central Coast's only Olympic finalist when she easily qualified for the medley. However, illness before the final took the edge off the 18-year-old and she finished 8th. Throughout the year, Donna competed all over the world in various national and Australian Institute sport teams. And at home, won hunter, state and national swimming titles.
The taste and smell swimmers have
The
come
$470 million Sydney Beach Protection System was criticised last October by Environment Minister Tim Moore. Mr Moore admitted it would probably not do as good a job as the Water Board had suggested. Yesterday's Sydney Morning Herald reported that 2 experts commissioned to assess the project had also cast doubts on its effectiveness. This has startled Newcastle and Lake Macquarie residents, as both cities are in the process of getting new sewerage outfalls. The $44 million upgrading of the Burwood Beach wastewater treatment plant is 12 months behind schedule, and beachgoers, especially those frequenting Merriweather and Dudley, are suffering the consequences.
You get a lot of ear infections and throat infections and stuff like that. I remember one time I got a little nick and it didn't even bleed, and the next day my leg was going hard. I couldn't get it to move.
And some winds comes around, you can see it just on the foam. It's like it's not foam as it is now, it's just frothy foam.
However, according to the Hunter District Water Board, the surface problems are almost over. The board is constructing a 1,900-metre tunnel to carry the sewage out to sea, where it will be released into the ocean by diffusers. And according to Deputy Manager Peter Michelle, Newcastle will not be faced with the same problems as Sydney because the Burwood work includes a secondary treatment plant due to come onto line in mid-1992.
Now, I'm not saying that there's not going to be the impossible event that brings things back onto the beach, but the normal design says the beaches will be open to the public.
The Department of Public Works says the West Lake sewage scheme covering Lake Macquarie will also present no problem, as sewage will only be released after secondary treatment. Many beachgoers, however, remain unconvinced by the official assurances. NBN weatherman and long-time surfer Nat Jeffrey is one of those who doesn't believe pumping the sewage further out into the ocean is a solution.
It may lessen the problem slightly for Merriweather, but it's going to make it worse at the other beaches. I feel that it's just going to spread it further around. The whole thing is just not going to work at all.
Get in there.
When the rain poured down on Friday, dumping 250 millimetres on the central coast, no one anticipated a repeat performance of last April's floods. Least of all one Umina family, who had already lost nearly everything they owned. Bernice Moore of Neera Road, Umina, was with a neighbour when a small dam broke. In her attempts to rush home to her daughter and 9-month-old grandson, the force of water swept her under a car. By the time she got home, the water was hip deep and the house was wrecked.
I felt like taking a bottle of sleeping tablets because I have not got anything left now. I am absolutely devastated. It'd be just as easy to do away with myself than fight.
The family blames the council for poor drainage and for allowing development on swampland behind them. The Moores are just one of the hundreds of families being helped by the Disaster Relief Centre. Families can get immediate cash assistance up to $5,000 and can then apply for a flood relief committee. And the whole Central Coast hopes to be declared a disaster zone in a bid to release more funding. Gosford City Mayor Alderman Pat Harrison said the state government has been approached for more relief funds. Council had been overturned by the Land and Environment Court over development near Neera Road, she said.
We're well aware that there's an enormous amount of drainage work to be done. The problem is that I don't think anything could have coped with Friday's rain. I mean, in areas of Gosford over 10 inches of rain fell in 6 hours. Our drainage is designed to cope with a sort of 1 in 10 year flood. We've had a 1 in 100 year flood in areas of Gosford 3 times in the last 12 months, and maybe we're going to have to look at our standards and decide whether in fact we do need to do more work where it hasn't been done. But there's always a lack of funds, and we're putting more into drainage this year than we did last year.
How do council answer the arguments that
Federal police told the court their operation began when their Newcastle office was contacted by a local commercial pilot. He told them he'd spoken to a person who was looking for an instrument pilot to fly a Cessna 402 from New Guinea to Australia with a cargo of gold. It's alleged a federal police officer posing as a pilot made contact with the man. Later, during a telephone conversation, the man said he was flying to New Guinea. The officer was then telephoned by a second man and a meeting was arranged at an inner-city hotel where it's alleged 42-year-old James Edmund Norman of Mildura outlined the plan. It's alleged that Norman showed the detective maps of New Guinea detailing where he wanted him to go. He said there would be 500 pounds of cannabis waiting for him as well as 100 pounds of gold and New Guinea currency. Shortly later, detectives moved in and Norman was taken to their offices for questioning.
Peter Hodgson had fished in just about every waterhole in the Newcastle region and had come to the conclusion that every one of them was drastically overfished. It was his frustration at continually coming up empty-handed that prompted his search for a surefire way to start catching fish. In the end, he decided to create something himself, and so set about developing his very own burley. Now, 5 years down the track and more than $100,000 out of pocket, he believes he's come up with something very special.
Most burleys fish actually eat, but my product, they're not interested in eating it. All it does is the smells and things that emanate out from the product change the fish's attitude to feeding, makes them want to feed fiercely, and they eat then anything that they think's food around them.
Already the Hobson burley is beginning to prick interest in Australian fishing circles. Tests and trials carried out throughout the country have proved it to be a definite aid in snaring fish. At Mooney Beach this morning he put the burley to test before our cameras and was quickly surrounded by a horde of hungry fish. Those sort of results have prompted 2 Newcastle companies to each back Peter to the tune of $20,000, while many fishing traders are placing big orders. But Peter says the Australian reaction has really only been lukewarm, and that the Burley's real potential lies elsewhere.
The immediate market I'm looking for is the US of A. I've had people approach me from the United States who've seen my product on the shelf in Australia and who've talked to me about it and talked to people who've used it, right? And they think that it would be eminently suited to the Americans' idea of fishing. American people would accept it quite fiercely.
That's fine.
The Pacific Highway from Raymond Terrace north to Taree is one of the most dangerous stretches of road in New South Wales. Car crashes are a common occurrence, and up until recently the 37-kilometre run from Karua to Bulahdelah had only one emergency phone, here on the Tea Gardens turnoff. Now, after vandals have struck for the 3rd time in the last 13 months, there is no link with emergency services, and Tea Gardens residents are sick of spending the hundreds of dollars needed to replace it.
I think it's grossly unfair because the highway doesn't even go through our towns. It's 10 kilometres away from Tea Gardens and Hawk's Nest, and it is a state responsibility.
Hans Pacey from the Tea Gardens Accident and Emergency Service, a retired doctor, believes people could die if something isn't done.
50% of all road casualties die within 1 hour. And if you have to travel to Tea Gardens, to Bulahdelah or Karua to get hold of a telephone to notify the ambulance, then this telephone saves 15 minutes, 15 vital minutes in help to reach the scene of an accident.
Dr Pacey says from 1969 to 1980 there was a vandal-proof phone installed, but after some disagreements with Telecom, this phone was replaced. He says a vandal-proof phone is a must.
This was a very strong steel box, which a very strong steel grid in front of it. You pressed one button, and inside a microphone took up your voice and the loudspeaker answered. The call was terminated from the other end.
So it was vandal-proof?
It was vandal-proof.
Telecom estimates some $34 million is spent on wrecked phones each year in Australia. Dr Pacey estimates a new vandal-proof phone would cost about $2,000 to install. Peter Ryan reporting for NBN News.
Lifeline is expanding its services by conducting a summer school at its Gordon Avenue headquarters. In the main, the course looks at creation spirituality, or getting people to understand better how to live more harmoniously in a world created by God. As part of this, instructor Andrew Seath is conducting a course in Touch for Health. Put simply, this is like acupuncture but without pins, balancing energies in the medians of the body by massage.
Well, the ancient Chinese worked with meridians, as most people are now aware, and they realised that there was an energy flow that we can't really describe. It runs around these meridians, and sometimes they just get out of balance, and our bodies are trying to be in balance all the time. And by using acupressure and other gentle techniques, we can restore harmony in the body.
As well as the 24 hours a day telephone counselling service, Lifeline also offers face-to-face help for emotional problems and people knocked out of kilter by finance worries. The organisation is always looking for more trained telephone counsellors to help handle its 14,000 calls annually. Some of the people at this week's course will become counsellors, but that's not the point. As Lifeline Director Noel Cathcart explains, the course is open to all. A new Lifeline service.
We believe that the telephone counselling will always be the basic reason behind our existence. But individuals need a lot more than that. They need an opportunity to expand their own consciousness, their own development.
The Newcastle Jockey Club has held only a handful of free meetings in the past. All of them have been a success, but today was beyond all expectations. Warm sunshine, the holiday season, and of course the chance to keep that $5 admission for the butter on the horse attracted more than 5,000, a remarkable crowd for a midweek meeting. The dress code for the day has varied from the ultra-smart of the keen racing folk to the casual of the holiday makers. The dress was what today was all about. Organised by the James Travel Group, it was purely a free day to promote racing and the holiday season. And the general opinion?
Should be more of them.
There's a terrific crowd here today, and everybody seems to be enjoying themselves.
They'll get a lot more people if they let more people in for nothing.
Yeah, I think it encourages a lot of people to come that perhaps wouldn't otherwise do so. Yeah.
But they want to think about getting more of the people here to bring the prices down and not be giving such big prize money away.
The feature event on the 9-race program was the Jays CTC Cruisers Cup over 1,200 metres.
Bold Sea and All Stormy coming down the outside. Smoke in front, Bold Sea is coming after it. Magic Gleamer's getting the rails run. Bold Sea swept up, went past Smoke. All Stormy and Magic Gleamer running home, but Bold Sea, this is the real Bold Sea. He stood up today and took a bow. TJ couldn't do it, but this new trainer did. Bold Sea.
The state government's $11 million commitment to save Tuggerah Lakes comes at a time when a question mark concerning a chemical plant hangs over the Central Coast. Wildshire Council originally approved the proposal from Ashland Chemicals to set up a plant on bushland between Berkeley Vale and Arimba. After loud public protest, the council rescinded the approval and voted to refuse the application. Now an appeal from Ashland is expected by the end of this year. Today, Wyong Councillor Alderman Tony Irving claimed fighting the appeal will cost ratepayers up to $100,000.
It was initially approved without not so much as one of them even asking for or reading the original environmental impact statement. In fact, I was the only one that did do that. And upon my reading it and relaying my fears of the proposal to the other councillors and, of course, the enormous public interest, council laws subsequently changed their mind.
Protesters told Mr Moore they feared liquid overflows from the chemical plant would go into Arimba Creek and then into Tuggerah Lake. Mr Moore said he will be giving information to Wyong Council and local residents from the State Pollution Control Commission on the likely effects of the chemical plant.
And certainly Bob Graham, as the local member, has expressed very strong concern to me about the possible impact on the lakes, which the state government is committed to spending about $11 million restoring. We've always said that the Tuggerah Lake system is the environmental jewel on the crown for the Central Coast of New South Wales, and we would not permit anything to occur which would threaten the environment of those lakes.
He said the state government is committed to the greening of the Central Coast and that the preservation of Wirrabulong Reserve at Batteau Bay and the Red Gum Forest at the entrance is part of this campaign.
It's part of a series of additions to national parks and nature reserves on the Central Coast. We expect that there will be new wetlands nature reserves on Brisbane waters. We hope that there will be additions to Budai National Park as well during the forthcoming year. We are committed to greening of the Central Coast. Bob Graham and Chris Harcher are strongly supportive of the government doing that, and part of the process is the creation of new reserve areas for the National Park Service.